Hi there, thanks for stopping by. I'm Nick,
I'm Karen.
and today we're going to be talking about,
Freedom and busting the myths around freedom.
well, that sounds like a major subject and a half.
It is, and a challenge to really find true freedom. So what is freedom to you? Is it sort of sitting on a beach, binge watching Netflix? Or is it doing what lights you up and having, I don't know, building resilience to face challenges that life throws at you? What does freedom mean to you?
I think freedom often means so many different things for different people. But what does it mean for us, really? How would you sort of define that?
I think it's finding things that light us up and not being caught in the trap that money equals freedom. I think if you've got enough money, it's a tool to freedom and perhaps hobbies and things you need to buy for the hobbies, but it's not the whole thing. And also not buying into the freedom dream of the house, the sports car, the perfect partner. It might be for you.
Obviously, I am the perfect partner. I just like to
Yes, yes. Those things might bring you freedom, but they're kind of what we're conditioned to want and need. And I think freedom's much more than that.
I think, and I've spoken about this before, but again, our society is so hooked up on the financial aspect, and it is important. There is so much more to life than money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think true freedom comes from here.
Yeah, this is an intellectual.
It's psychological achievement, maybe intellectual, because I think you've got to look inward to find it. But an intellectual thing, not a sort of money thing, definitely.
Yeah. Now, I've got a really very personal example of this concept of freedom for me, certainly, and for us, actually. And that's because for the last 4 years, longer actually, I've had a condition called CLL, which is a form of leukemia. And actually over the last 15 months, I've been having chemoimmunotherapy treatment, which isn't as awful as it sounds, but it has meant that we've had to not only shelter then, but for the last 4 years, really 5 years.
Since COVID, really.
Because of the COVID, because I was in the extremely vulnerable sort of group. And believe it or not, some fantastic news to share. As of this week, I was finally signed off from treatment after 15 months because all my blood results are back to normal. And that may be it now for the rest of my life. I may actually be absolutely fine. So, but what's really exciting is that we can literally start to mix with people again and go out and into towns and stuff. But with that comes this new sense of freedom. Ironically, a certain sense of anxiety. Oh, right, okay. Because we've been so conditioned now to live very sheltered lives, actually getting over that's going to be our next new challenge. But wow, what a sense of adventure, a sense of freedom.
So it seems a good opportunity for us to both sort of look in the mirror and think about, how do we feel about freedom? What are our thoughts and feelings? What do we want to be, this elusive word called free? What does it mean to us? And to ask ourselves questions. And I wonder if you've ever asked yourself, what sometimes stops you from doing, following your passions? What stops you? Is it fear? And is it certain fears, fear of failure or fear of being judged? And I certainly know for me that's true. Even with simple things like me pursuing my artwork, fear of being judged for that.
I think often what we all do is, to a certain extent, if we're not careful, we can sabotage ourselves in exactly that way. And that's something that we can literally trip ourselves up the first step.
Because change is scary, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over is very, very safe. But I also know for me, part of freedom is achieving new things and trying out new things. That sense of achievement feels free because I've done something new. I wonder if you ever make excuses. If you're like me and you make excuses for not doing things. And I think this sort of looking into your sort of psychology and asking yourself, are those excuses valid? Or actually, do they need to be challenged? And so we're going to be doing all that kind of thing, as well as looking at, what lights us up, what fires us up, what's going to drive us on, what's going to give us the energy to find that freedom.
That's something I would say. If you have trouble sort of working out, well, what does light me up? What is my passion? That is something you're going to have to go on a bit of a journey to discover. And I would often say, just look back at your own life and see those moments where you've just really loved doing something you haven't done maybe for a long time, and that will give you a real insight into what you might want to center your life around going forward.
Definitely. And one of the things that I really enjoyed with my career in education, I've always been involved in mental health and well-being and self-esteem and getting both students and teachers to be the best they can be. And I suddenly realised I really missed that sort of research element and that sort of finding strategies, which of course when I was learning these things and teaching them, I was also benefiting, and so were you from them as well. So
I was often the target audience when Karen's testing this stuff out.
So this vlogging that we're doing now is like a personal journal of, finding out more and learning, but also I'm realising now is actually part of my freedom journey. I think I have found something that lights me up. And the conversations we have around the topics we discuss are brilliant.
Well, it just makes us really think and step back and evaluate. Are we doing this right? Are we walking the walk?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But nobody gets these things completely right. So it's all about actually just taking time out and saying, okay, what have we done right?
Yeah.
At the back. What could we do a little bit better?
Yeah. So looking at your sort of inner thoughts and feelings, but also then I think another big step to freedom is making time, having enough energy to actually pursue the things that light you up. So setting boundaries is really important. Setting boundaries to protect your mental health so that you've got enough energy and mental capacity to pursue what lights you up.
I think there's a really good sort of personal example we can talk to you about here. And with Karen, there was a point in her career where she had let's put it mildly, a really difficult line manager. And Karen, would you like to sort of share that? Because I think it's really quite insightful.
Yeah, well, basically I was getting criticised for doing things that I felt were right. And I'm somebody who likes feedback. I want to get better. I like to improve. But I was just feeling something is fundamentally wrong here. This is not right, what I'm being told and how I'm being criticised. And my self-esteem really took a hit, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And I think the phrase that a lot of people would use these days for this would be gaslighting. And that's pretty much what was happening for Karen. And at one point it got so much, Karen, a very strong woman, as you can probably tell, to see Karen being sort of almost reduced to tears by this person.
Reduced to tears.
I sort of realised I actually had to do sort of like positive intervention. And, that's exactly what we did. But we really talked about it, really thought at what could be done. But, we all have moments like this where we, a situation gets bigger than us.
Yeah. And I think I had to really, ask myself the question, is it fair what this person is saying? Am I being defensive? Am I making excuses? When I dug down to my core values, I realised that actually our values were very different. I came from a base of compassion and feeling that seeing the good in people brought the best out of both students and staff. And I think their basis was much more punitive, that you were punitive and got rid of what you didn't like.
So that may again strike a chord with you. Have you sort of gone through this yourself, where somebody has really effectively manipulated reality, to the point that your own self-esteem has sort of like dived?
So I was feeling that all my freedom to make the choices that I felt at work were the correct ones were not being able to happen. And so I had to put a very firm boundary around me and agree in my head that whatever she said to me, I would look at it, But if I didn't agree, I wouldn't let it affect me because I knew fundamentally I didn't respect where that was coming from. And that really helped in a short-term way. But eventually I had to look at what kind of environment did I actually want to work in. And that led to me actually finding a dream job.
Absolutely. And it was incredible seeing Karen going through this journey and going from a point of real, like, this is all real truth in life, isn't it? You know, like, have you ever had this where that darkest moment is before the dawn? And to see that Karen sort of reduced to like tears and everything, and then through that, a real determination kicked in, and that was absolutely wonderful to see. I literally saw Karen rising phoenix-like from the ashes, and she ended up with the most fantastic job. And it's incredible how sometimes these low moments in life can lead to such happiness, because if you push through, it's amazing what can be waiting for you at the other end of that.
Absolutely. So that was putting a boundary around sort of my mental health. But even sometimes, I don't know if you've ever got a friend, you look forward to going for a coffee with this friend, and you get there and basically they talk at you, and you think, crikey, I'm just an audience here. And you leave feeling sapped of energy. And I think, looking at relationships like that, because if, that's how you're sort of spending your socializing time, you're not then having the energy to pursue what lights you up. So boundaries are a way you can show, I think, respect for yourself, and, preserve your mental health, your energy, and preserve your time for moving up, creating opportunities to follow what you want. Another thing I think that's really important is knowing what you can and can't change.
Now, there's a very famous area of philosophy called Stoicism, and particularly Seneca around the 1st century AD. He really refined this idea of I think I could condense it down to saying, don't sweat the big stuff. What do I mean by that? It's the stuff which is actually beyond your control to actually change. And that's not to saying you can't do something in a small way towards that thing, but it's actually where we invest so much energy because maybe the state of the world is awful and we feel so down about it. But actually knowing at what point we can engage with that feeling and do maybe small positive steps, but actually where we need to stand back and say, I can't actually affect the change in that particular area.
Yeah, focusing on what you can change.
Yeah.
And I know that you've done journaling around the things you can't change, and you found that helpful.
Yeah, again, this may strike a chord. Have you hit a period of life and it's really hard to see the wood for the trees? You're in the moment, it's so hard, so tough. Well, I've certainly had moments like that. I know Karen has, but my own technique that I found has worked so well is to journal, to write these things down, to get them out of my head onto the page. And right there, it gives me a bit of distance, enough distance to be able to actually say, okay, I sort of understand what's going on there. And just the process of getting out of your head onto a bit of paper, I find, is brilliant. It really helps me get that distance I can start to grasp whatever that issue might be and work things through in my head. And, I've had some really tough times occasionally in my life, and journaling has been a really powerful tool. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, particularly I'm a great sort of looking back, if only I'd done this, or worrying about what's coming in the future. It's the classic that we only have the present. But actually what we've done in the past can sort of affect how we are in the moment, and worrying about the future can obviously have that draining effect. So trying to be in the moment, and things that have put in the past, learn from them, move on, put them to bed.
I mean, I think you're saying being present. Being present at the moment.
Yeah. And just I have to watch out all the time, I don't know whether you do, for sort of unhelpful habits coming back in, like that, thinking, if only I'd done that, my life might be different, or I'm worried about what's going to happen there.
I think that the what if moments, but we all spend maybe a bit too much time thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope we've given you some things to think about, and we'd really like to know what you do think and any tips that you've got for us for, finding your freedom. And just thinking about what we've talked about today, that it's not about money. It's more of a psychological achievement, finding freedom. Having an honest conversation with yourself to break any psychological chains holding you back, any, fear of failure, and, to take those risks. And going back to what we can learn from the Stoics that Nick was talking about, that, focus on what you can change. Don't waste time fretting and worrying about what you can't change. Focus on what you can. And remembering, just take action. Your first step is your first step to freedom. And there's no door locked to freedom. Any chains to that are in your mind.
Well, I think that's really true. That a lot of these, the reason we don't start is ourselves, and what we perceive, and the fears that keep us trapped.
And freedom doesn't have to be an all-encompassing 100% time. You may have, really important responsibilities that you want to carry out. You might be caring for a loved one, but working out a time in that day that you can have some freedom will enhance, your well-being, and will, have a positive effect on the person you're looking after. So I just urge you to take some time to carve out, get the support, to get some help for yourself. And don't let money or lack of time stop you from pursuing your dream and your freedom, because you don't need masses of time to be free. You can do it in short bursts. If you're lucky enough to have more time and less responsibilities, then go for it.
I think now, as always, has any of this really struck a chord with you? We'd love to hear your own experiences. Anything that we can all sort of learn from, we can learn from. Maybe you'll feel you can share these sorts of things with other people, because we're all on this journey called life together. It's all about making sure that the best is ahead of us, particularly in later life. So until next time, you take care, and we'll speak soon.
Bye.